Hail, and welcome back to Wake the Dead. I know I said I would put out a video a lot sooner than this, and I apologize for my tardiness. I got quite sick, and I felt like I wasn't in the right condition to make a video. However, now I'm feeling some conviction, as I believe that honoring your word is very important on the path to self-mastery. But with that aside, I am glad and pleased to present to you the 7 Hermetic Principles for Self-Mastery Explained. Number 1. The principle of mentalism. The all is mind. The universe is mental.
I would personally reword this so that it has the same principle but with different wording as to not lead to confusion. I would reword it as the all is consciousness and the universe is conscious. The reason I would reword it this way is because oftentimes when people think of mind, they associate it with the false egoic mind, the identification with thought forms. And what this really means is something that goes beyond any form of thought, any form of feeling, any form of ego identity. The universe itself is consciousness. What this points to is the truth that consciousness is the fundamental reality. What scientists would have you believe is that consciousness is a byproduct of the brain. But this basically flips it backwards and says that if it wasn't for consciousness, there could be no universe. Life could have never taken shape. Our species could have never evolved, and therefore we could have never developed such a complex, multidimensional brain. All our brains are, I guess you could compare it to a radio. When you hear white noise on the radio, that's the sound of the universe. That's the sound of expansion that started with the Big Bang. I guess in a way you could say it's the sound of consciousness. You don't need a radio for that white noise, for the energy behind it to exist, but the radio happens to be able to pick it up. Now, if you dial the radio into a certain station, you're going to get a certain station with its own characteristics, but really that station is just a different version of the white noise that you hear when you're not specifically dialed in. So our brain can be seen as a radio transmitter for consciousness itself. And when we develop a personality as we're growing up, it's like we are developing our own radio station, as it were. And who you think you are on the level of thought is just one station in an eternal library of stations in different frequencies, but they all come from the one frequency of consciousness itself. Consciousness has been given many, many different names by religious leaders. The Buddha has referred to consciousness as mind, but the Buddha has also referred to consciousness as emptiness. Jesus referred to consciousness as the kingdom of heaven, and Lao Tzu referred to consciousness as the Tao which cannot be named. Esoteric occult practices like ceremonial magic and Wicca would call consciousness the mystery, the great mystery. And First Nations teachings would call it the Great Spirit or the Spirit World or just the Spirit. It doesn't matter what you call it, for as one Taoist scripture states, the Tao which can be named is not the eternal Tao. So whenever you have a problem, basically the light of your consciousness is being obscured, and the problem is a shadow cast by that obscurity. It's when you allow something false in you to become part of who you are. It's basically a false thought form ego identification. And so the light that you are, because you are light, you are consciousness, filters through your mind, and when there's something false in you that you're holding on to, it casts a shadow, and that shadow manifests itself as problems and suffering and sicknesses and illnesses. So in order to be free from these problems, these illnesses, we must confront that which is false within us. And when we confront that which is false within us, all that is left is truth. And that truth is the light of your own consciousness, the fundamental reality of the universe itself.